Hello, college football fans! Coming at you Sunday, September the 26th, day after week 4. Alabama took care of business against Southern Miss 63-14, exactly what they were supposed to do. We're all very happy about that. I predicted that game was going to be 45-10, and it would have been close to that if it wasn't for Jamison Williams going nuts. 2 kickoff return touchdowns, plus an 81-yard touchdown reception. Goodness gracious, 3 touches and almost 300 yards. Well, I guess he's going to be some kind of player of the week. He's got to be. Special teams player of the week, I guess. Maybe both offensive and special teams player of the week. He deserves it. But anyway, I've got exactly what I wanted out of this ball game. I don't know about you guys. I got Roydell Williams, finally. A good helping of Roydell. And what did he do? He went out and had the best day that a running back has had this season for Alabama. First guy to get 100 yards in a game. I felt like the whole running game looked so much better today, probably better today than it has all season long. The offensive line looked much more cohesive. Obviously, the talent that they were playing against has something to do with that, but it still looked better than it did against Mercer, and I'm pretty sure Southern Miss has better talent than Mercer does. So that's good news going into that just terrifying game with Ole Miss next week. Buckle your seatbelts up for that one, Bama fans, because I feel like it's going to be another wild one. Back to the Alabama-Southern Miss game, though. I was glad to see Roydell get in there and tighten up, and I was glad to see the offensive line look like they were more cohesive and knew what they were doing a little bit better, and the receivers continue to look good. Mechie, we know what he is. Jamison Williams is getting better every week. They're not up to the level of the Hall of Famers that they're all successors of, but they're looking good. They're looking exactly what we want them to be, which is an elite championship offense. The defense, they were, like I said, they were going to look better against Southern Miss than they looked against Florida. It was impossible for them not to, which they did. But I'm glad everything happened that I wanted to happen. I didn't see Ajay Hall. First of all, I learned how to pronounce his name, Ajay Hall. But either he's dinged up a little bit or they're going to redshirt him, which, like I said last week, I think that'd be a good idea. We probably don't need him this year. But he was a monster in the 8A game, and I would like to see him come around if they're not going to redshirt him. I'd like to see him get a lot of playing time. But no, JoJo and Jamison Williams and Mechie and Slade Bolden ought to be able to hold the fort down this year. And we all expect them to do that. But, next week is going to be a whole different ball of wax. And I'm looking forward to it, though. I'm nervous for the boys, but I know it's going to be a very entertaining football game for me and all the spectators out there in the world. Well, moving on to the rest of the country, my national upset pick didn't work out again, but I, once again, came very close to picking that one correctly. I feel like all year Oklahoma is going to be a good guess for an upset pick because they are not very good on either side of the ball. They don't have a very good defense. They don't have a very good offense right now, which is shocking at Oklahoma, but it's just the case. And moving on to Clemson, they've got even worse problems in Oklahoma, and I have been mentioning it since the Georgia-Clemson game that I don't believe that Georgia should be getting quite the credit for that game. That they deserve more credit for the Vanderbilt game than that game, in my opinion. But Clemson is done. They are not going to be a college football playoff contender for the rest of this season, which probably means the ACC is not going to have a representative in the college football playoff this year because their hopes are now hanging on Wake Forest and Boston College. And let's be adults about this. Those teams are not going to be sniffing a college football playoff appearance. But back to Clemson. This is what everyone's been waiting for Saban to do at Alabama. I guess Dabo is showing the fact that he's a little bit more human than Saban, a little bit closer to mortal, because this is what happens to mortal coaches. You just cannot maintain elite excellence for vastly extended periods of time. Like Nick Saban has. You just can't expect anybody to be able to do what Nick Saban's been doing at Alabama. And I never expected Dabo to be able to keep it up at Clemson. Clemson's a much tougher place to maintain that level of talent even as high profile as Dabo's made it, it's still not Alabama. It's never going to have that amount of cachet. What team does, really, at this point? But, Dabo's still a wonderful coach, probably the second best coach in college football right now. And he's a Bama guy, he's a Gene Stallings guy, and I wish him nothing but the best as long as he's not playing Alabama. And I'm not ready to say that the dynasty is over, because this with Clemson has gotten me thinking about dynasties, and I want to give my own personal definition of what a dynasty is. I think there's too much ambiguity surrounding that term. First of all, Clemson's dynasty is not over because of the fact that they're not going to win the title this year. That's going to mean 3 straight years that they haven't won a national title. And my personal definition of a dynasty is going to be, after you've got it rolling, it's not over until it's gone 4 full seasons without a national title. Because that's a full graduating class of seniors that would not have had a title during your tenure, or during their tenure. And so, to me, that means if you go 4 years after you've started a dynasty, then the dynasty is over. Now, how do you become a dynasty in the first place, you might ask, Bam Randy? Well, I believe that obviously it's got to be multiple titles within a 4-year span. Then you've got a dynasty going. And the first time you go 4 more years without winning a title, it's over. So, if Clemson goes next year without winning a title, then their dynasty, Dabo Swinney's dynasty, is officially over. And it's never coming back unless he starts a new one. Bear Bryant had 2 dynasties in his career in the early 60s and the mid to late 70s. So you can pull it off. You can have multiple dynasties. Nick Saban has decided to just have one giant dynasty in his career at Alabama. So that's the way that he's going to do it, and I like it. I am a big fan of the long, sustained dynasty. But Clemson, we're only 4 weeks into the season, and we already know that the playoff is going to look very different this year, because Clemson's not going to be in it. And it's the first year since the first playoff in 2014 that Clemson is not going to be a participant. And it's like I said, I don't think the ACC is probably not going to have a participant in it either, because it's not going to be Wake Forest or Boston College, and we already know it's not going to be Clemson. But, moving on to the rest of the conference, got to start off with the LSU-Mississippi State game. That looked definitely like a game that was determining the cellar dweller of the SEC West. Neither one of those teams looked very good to me. Like I said, the Mike Leach team was a mystery because of Mike Leach, but they just made too many mistakes. I think they looked like the better team on the field yesterday, but they made enough mistakes for themselves and for a couple of other teams, and maybe even next week's worth. Just fumbles and the guy leaping over the punt guard, and how does that kid not know that's a penalty? And that was a killer. I mean, he doesn't leap over that game, or if he doesn't leap over that fence like that, then Mississippi State probably pulls out that victory, in my opinion. I picked them to win it 31-20, and they wound up losing it 28-25 instead. But like I said, I still feel like Mississippi State is the better team. When it's all said and done, LSU is going to be at the bottom of the SEC West, and I do believe Mississippi State is going to figure out how to pick off some teams that they probably weren't supposed to, because that's just the nature of Mike Leach. He's a strange one, and he's playing his own kind of game, like I said last week. But moving on to the Florida-Tennessee game, that one was a perfect pick, almost. I picked that game to be 38-17, and it wound up being 38-14, so I don't think I could get much closer on that one. I'm feeling good about that. I'm also still feeling really good about the Florida Gators. But I'm also feeling good about the Tennessee Volunteers for where they're at. They're definitely on an upward trajectory right now, and you have to be happy for that fan base, because they've been much maligned for quite some time now. And they got to be happy that ship seems to be righted for the time being. And we're going to move on and talk about some other games. I've got my little paper with me this week to look at. And going to finish this up. Going to get parked here. All right, folks. Pulling in here for a moment. All right, Georgia Vandy. Well, the legend of the mighty 2021 Georgia Bulldogs continues with a 61-0 win over Vanderbilt. 62-0, sorry. 62-0 is impressive. I don't care who you're playing, but it's still a conference win, and that little one is going to go in their column. And I still don't think that they have the offense once they start playing championship level teams to be able to keep up, but I have no proof of that right now, except that Clemson game. But that was a month ago. We're going into October now. It's a different team. They're getting talent back. They're getting receivers back on offense. So, I'm not going to dog them anymore until I have a reason to, because they're looking like everything everybody thinks that they look like right now. We're just going to have to wait until all of the data is in to make a determination on whether or not they're falling. Missouri, Boston College. Oh, this is another one that I got dead wrong. I really did feel like Missouri, even though they're closer to the bottom of the SEC and Boston College is closer to the top of the ACC, that the SEC was that much ahead of the ACC right now. But I suppose they are not. And you got to hand Boston College congratulations on that one. That's a good win for them. Texas A&M, Arkansas, the game of the week. I thought it would be closer. I thought there more points would be scored. But the result was what I predicted, which was an Arkansas victory. They are definitely on a better trajectory right now than Texas A&M. Texas A&M, I'm going to be honest, they looked even worse than I thought they were. And I've been very unimpressed with them their entire time in the SEC, but certainly this whole season. And they may be in worse trouble than I thought. And Jimbo Fisher, I think it's about time for that fan base to start questioning him, although I don't know who they're going to hire that's any better. I just feel like Texas A&M's got a ceiling, and they've hit it. They've been bumping into that ceiling for the last couple of years, and that's it. This was their run, and you'll just see them either stay around the same or decline from this point forward. That's how I see it anyway. Another game I was pretty wrong about was that Georgia State-Auburn game. I did pick Auburn to win, but I picked them to win 50-10 in a cakewalk. And they had to fight for their life. They had to pull Bo Nix and put in T.J. Finley. That does not bode well for Auburn right now. I'm going to have to pump the brakes on my optimism about their season, I suppose, after that game. But I'm not going to completely reverse my opinion of them. And I think Brian Harson's doing a good job, and I feel like they look like a decent, solid football team right now, which is certainly no worse than anyone could have expected. It's going at least as expected, if not a little bit better if you're an Auburn fan. Maybe not as good as I was thinking earlier, but we learn as we move forward in these seasons. It's always like this. Kentucky, South Carolina. Kentucky kicked field goals instead of getting touchdowns, which is definitely worrisome for them going ahead, especially going to next week. I know they've got Florida next week. And, 16 points is certainly not going to cut it against the Gators. But it's another win, and, Kentucky's doing what they do. They're hanging around, and they're a question mark. Looks to me like Levis may not be quite as good as Kentucky certainly hoped at the beginning of the season, but you never know. He could turn it on in the bright lights and be one of those guys that's better in a higher pressure situation. But Kentucky's defense and offensive line, I think, is good enough to keep them in any game they're going to be in this season. And I do still think there's a chance that they could upset a team that they have no business upsetting. And that's going to be it for the recap of Week 4. We're looking forward to Week 5 because it is super blockbuster time. And we'll be talking about that more next week. I want to do a power ranking, an SEC power ranking for my own personal opinion. And, of course, we'll be talking about a whole lot more. Thank you.